The first 7 days of semen retention change everything, and yet it's only the beginning. Your posture starts to shift, your thoughts slow down. You feel more grounded, more certain, more there. The body begins redirecting energy, rewiring the nervous system, and rebuilding the mind's grip over urges. Testosterone starts climbing. Dopamine resets just enough to make simple tasks feel rewarding again. It's the stage where awareness returns, where you realize how much control you had been giving away. Even eye contact becomes easier. You feel less reactive, more composed. But this is just the ignition, a spark. The engine hasn't even warmed up yet. At 180 days, everything sharpens. By then, you're not just holding energy, you are energy. The voice deepens without effort. The gaze holds without intention. Your body doesn't just move, it leads. At this stage, the benefits are no longer surface level. They bleed into your decisions, your posture, your presence. People feel it before you speak. You don't chase outcomes anymore, they orbit around you. Hormones stabilize, creativity surges, and your pain threshold rises. But here's the part no one expects. What seemed impossible on day 7 becomes your baseline at day 180. That's when retention stops being a tactic and becomes your nature. That's when you stop managing urges and start building legacies. Section 1. Sensory reset. Day 7 doesn't feel loud, it feels quiet. That's the first sign. The constant mental noise, those flashes of distraction, compulsive thoughts, or subtle urges that creep in without warning, begins to fade, not disappear, fade. This is the brain recalibrating. When you hit a full week of retention, the neural pathways used to being overstimulated by rapid artificial dopamine hits begin to weaken. Your system starts pruning, cutting off dead branches in your reward circuitry. The stuff that used to pull your attention, quick scrolling, clickbait, pixel-based seduction, suddenly loses grip. You're not forcing yourself to ignore it, you just stop craving it. That's not willpower. That's neurological clarity waking up. Your senses become sharper, not louder. It's not that the world changes, but your filter does. You begin hearing with more depth, tasting with more attention, seeing without scanning. This is your brain stepping out of constant consumption mode and returning to observation before you were overloaded. Reward centers firing at everything like a broken radar. But by day 7, that radar starts focusing. You notice tone in voices, posture in strangers, detail in the air. This isn't some mystical awareness. It's the body, finally quiet enough to receive instead of just chase. And it feels powerful because it is. Sexual overstimulation, especially through screens, trains the brain to reward artificial intensity. Fast cuts, high novelty, zero patience. But 7 days without it, that's enough for the brain to start rejecting the noise. Synaptic pruning begins, a built-in cleanup system that removes excess pathways, the ones that were built around dopamine abuse. What's left behind is more raw signal, less static. You're not just abstaining, you're dewiring. And as this happens, your reward system begins reconnecting with real life, real touch, real achievement, real presence. Things you used to overlook now hit harder because your system isn't numbed out. It's recalibrating. Section 2, Enhanced Rewiring. At 180 days, the mental noise is no longer just managed, it's replaced. The default mode network, the part of your brain responsible for self-reflection, identity, and future planning, begins operating in an entirely new rhythm. You no longer just react to what's happening, you start designing what happens next. Decisions feel cleaner, thoughts hold their shape. You stop chasing validation or urgency. Instead, your mind starts writing from the inside out. This isn't fake confidence, it's a rewired core. Long-term retention reorganizes the system behind your thinking, turning scattered loops into directed energy. Every choice starts to feel like it comes from you, not the environment. Most people live in reaction. They flinch, respond, and adapt to whatever stimulus hits next. But with 180 days of retention, that entire loop begins to collapse. What forms in its place is something far more powerful: command. Your thoughts aren't just faster, they're smoother. That's because the left and right hemispheres of your brain begin to harmonize. Emotions don't override logic. Logic doesn't suffocate emotion. They move together. Strategic thinking and calm self-expression start happening without effort. You say the right things without rehearsing. You read people before they speak. You respond with timing that lands like a strike, not a stumble. This mental cohesion starts changing your place in every room. People look to you, not because you demand attention, but because your presence holds shape. You're not scattered, you're not erratic, you're intentional, and it's obvious. Retention over months gives your brain enough time to strengthen those inner networks, so that self-scheme, self-regulation, and future vision stop competing and start syncing. You no longer wonder who you are, you embody it. That's when life becomes directional, not chaotic. You walk into spaces with a frequency that tells people you're not figuring it out, you've already decided. Section 3, Identity Transmutation. Day 7. Feels like waking up from a fog. Your mind isn't perfect, but something has shifted. The constant jump between tabs, thoughts, impulses, that twitchy mental chaos begins to settle. Dopamine is no longer being drained through stimulation loops, so it starts to stabilize. You're able to lock in on one task, follow it through, and finish. You get small things done without overthinking, and for the first time in a while, progress feels satisfying again. But this is a fragile window. It's a detox phase. One wrong move, screwing too long, giving in to old habits, and the system collapses. You're holding focus now, but it still needs guarding. Fast forward to 180 days, and the entire story changes. Discipline no longer feels like effort, it feels like identity. You don't think about whether or not you'll show up, you just do. The urges that used to pull you around don't land anymore because the part of you that used to argue with them no longer exists. Retention rewires the very way you make decisions. It shifts your behavior from being fueled by motivation to being driven by internal code. People notice. They respect it without you saying a word. You're no longer faking control, you've become the embodiment of it. That's the quiet superpower of long-term retention. You don't need to prove your discipline anymore because it's written into every breath, every step, every word. Your nervous system doesn't flinch when things get hard. Your attention doesn't scatter when distraction calls. You become the kind of man who no longer hopes to change. You're already living as the version others are still trying to imagine. And that shift, it isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It just is. Retention stops being a practice and becomes your structure. And once you're built from that foundation, everything you touch moves forward.